When police found the body buried beneath leaves in the Illinois woods, they discovered something chilling clutched in the victim's hand, a fragment of her killer's skin, torn away in her final desperate fight for survival. But the DNA didn't match anyone in the system. For 5 years, a mother watched her daughter's killer walk free. Watched him attend vigils, join search parties, even embrace her with tears in his eyes, all while hiding the darkest secret imaginable. He thought he'd gotten away with it. He was wrong. This is the story of a 19-year-old girl who vanished on a morning hike with her mother in southern Illinois. Of a phone wiped clean. Of a water bottle abandoned by a creek with no footprints leading away. Of a predator who hunted in plain sight. And of the single strand of hair that would finally expose the monster hiding in a small town. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about the people living next door. About how evil disguises itself. About how long justice can take, and how far a mother will go to find it. But before we begin, if stories like this matter to you, if you believe that every victim deserves a voice and every truth deserves to be told, hit that subscribe button right now. Join the witness wall, where we don't just tell stories. We honor the lives behind them. Because Emily Grace Hartman's story didn't end in those woods. It started there. The photograph sat on the mantel, catching the morning light through half-drawn blinds. A girl with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her smile wide and unguarded, standing at the edge of a forest trail with her arms stretched toward the sky. Her eyes held everything: hope, youth, the kind of fearlessness that comes from never knowing how quickly the world can turn. That photo was taken at 9:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning in June at the Shawnee Hills Nature Preserve in southern Illinois. By sunset, she was gone. The woman sitting before it now barely recognized herself in the reflection of the glass. Her hair had turned gray in patches. Her hands, once steady, trembled when she reached out to trace the edges of the frame. Outside, car doors slammed. Voices murmured. The flicker of camera flashes bled through the curtains like distant lightning. Police tape cordoned off the property line. Reporters clustered near the driveway, their microphones angled toward anyone who dared step outside. They wanted a statement. They wanted tears. They wanted something to fill the silence that had settled over this small Illinois town like fog. But she had nothing left to give them. She couldn't stop staring at the photo. At her daughter's face. At the way the sunlight had caught her hair just right. At the fact that in just a few hours, everything they'd built together, every bedtime story, every scraped knee bandaged, every whispered secret, would collapse into a single, unbearable question. Where did she go? The detective had told her to prepare herself. He'd used words like evidence, timeline, persons of interest. But none of those words meant anything. None of them brought her daughter back through the front door, laughing about how she'd gotten lost on the trail and had to follow the creek back. None of them explained why her phone went straight to voicemail. None of them made sense of the silence. She remembered the weight of her daughter's head on her shoulder the night before. The way she'd smiled when she talked about her boyfriend. The plans she'd made for college in Carbondale. The dreams she'd whispered into the darkness, believing they had all the time in the world. But time had run out. And now, all that remained was this photograph, frozen in a moment before everything shattered. The mother closed her eyes and pressed her palm flat against the glass, as if she could reach through it and pull her daughter back. as if she could rewind the day and make different choices. Stay home. Cancel the hike. Hold on tighter. But the glass stayed cold beneath her hand. And outside, the reporters kept waiting. They'd been hiking that trail since her daughter was 7 years old. It started as a way to escape the noise of everyday life, the arguments, the stress, the weight of being a single mother trying to hold everything together. The Shawnee Hills Nature Preserve was an hour's drive north from their home in Marion, Illinois, tucked between two ridges where the air smelled like pine and damp earth. They'd go every few months, sometimes more. It became their ritual, their sacred space. Just the two of them and the quiet. Her daughter had loved it from the first time they'd gone. She'd run ahead on the trail, pointing out birds and wildflowers, collecting smooth stones from the creek. As she grew older, the hikes became less about exploration and more about conversation. They'd talk about school, boys, fears she didn't want to share with anyone else. The mother learned to listen for what wasn't said, the pauses, the sighs, the way her daughter's voice would shift when something bothered her. That Saturday morning in June, when her daughter suggested they go, the mother had hesitated. She'd been tired. Work at the county hospital had been overwhelming. There were errands to run, bills to sort through. But her daughter had looked at her with those bright eyes and said, "Come on, Mom. It's been forever. Just a few hours." And so she'd agreed. They left at 8:30. Her daughter wore her favorite hoodie, navy blue with a faded logo across the chest. She'd tied her hair back loosely, strands already escaping around her face. She was humming as she climbed into the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone. The mother glanced over at her. "You okay?" Her daughter looked up, surprised. "Yeah. Why? You seem distracted." A small smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired." But there was something in her voice. A hesitation. A flicker of something the mother couldn't name. She'd meant to ask more. Meant to press. But her daughter had already turned her attention back to her phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. A text conversation. The mother caught glimpses of the messages as she drove, short responses, emojis, someone named Jay. "Is that him?" she asked. Her daughter blushed. "Yeah. Everything good with you too?" The pause. Then, "Everything's fine." But the way she said it felt wrong. Like a door closing. The mother let it go. She told herself it was just teenage emotions. Growing pains. Her daughter was 19 now, on the edge of adulthood, figuring out who she was. She didn't need her mother hovering over every conversation, every relationship. Still, the unease stayed. They reached the trailhead just after 9:30. The parking lot was nearly empty, just two other cars. One was a silver sedan with Indiana plates. The other was an older pickup truck, faded blue paint and a cracked windshield. Her daughter stepped out and stretched, breathing in the cool morning air. "God, I miss this." The mother smiled. "Me too." They started up the trail together, side by side at first. The path was familiar, winding through dense trees, over roots and rocks, the sound of the creek somewhere off to the left. Birds called from the canopy. The sunlight filtered through the leaves in thin, golden beams. Her daughter walked ahead after a while, like she always did. She had her phone out, taking pictures of the trees, the sky, herself. She turned back and grinned. "Come on, let's get one together." The mother joined her. Her daughter held the phone up, angling it to capture both their faces with the forest behind them. She pressed the button. That was the last photo. Her daughter laughed and checked the screen. "Perfect. I'm posting this." The mother watched her type a caption. Watched her hit share. watched her slip the phone back into her pocket. "Love you, Mom," her daughter said, glancing back with a smile. "Love you too, sweetheart." And then she turned and kept walking, her figure disappearing around the bend. The mother followed, slower now. Her legs ached. Her mind wandered. She thought about work on Monday, about groceries, about how fast her daughter had grown up. She didn't notice the silence at first. Didn't notice that the bird song had stopped. Didn't notice that the forest felt different, heavier, somehow. Like something was watching. By the time she realized her daughter wasn't ahead of her anymore, it was already too late. The trail wound deeper into the preserve, narrowing as it climbed. The mother's breath came harder now, her legs burning with each step. She called out, her voice carrying through the trees. "Hey! Slow down." No answer. She wasn't worried yet. Her daughter did this sometimes, wandered ahead, got caught up in taking pictures or checking her phone. She'd always circle back eventually. The mother kept walking, her eyes scanning the path ahead. The trees pressed closer here, their branches forming a canopy that blocked most of the sunlight. The air was cooler. She could hear the creek now, louder than before, rushing somewhere off to the right. She rounded a bend and stopped. The trail split into two paths, one continuing upward, the other veering sharply down toward the water. There were no signs, no markers, just two dirt paths disappearing into shadow. "Which way did you go?" she muttered, pulling out her phone. No signal. She tried calling anyway. The line rang twice, then went to voicemail. "Hey, it's me. Leave a message." The sound of her daughter's voice sent a chill through her. She hung up and tried again. Same result. The mother stood there, left or right, up or down. She chose the upward path. It felt right. Her daughter always liked climbing higher, finding vantage points where she could see the whole valley spread out below. The trail grew steeper, rockier. Her shoes slipped on loose gravel. She grabbed onto trees to steady herself, her palms scraping against rough bark. "Sweetheart? Where are you?" Still nothing. She reached a clearing, a flat stretch of ground overlooking a steep drop. The view was stunning. Rolling hills covered in green, the creek glinting silver far below. But her daughter wasn't there. The mother's chest tightened. She turned and hurried back down, taking the other path this time. This one sloped sharply, winding through thick underbrush. Branches snagged at her clothes. Her breath came in short gasps. The creek appeared suddenly, wide and fast-moving. The water was clear but deep, rushing over smooth stones. The mother stopped at the edge, scanning both directions. "Hello." Her voice echoed back at her, distorted and hollow. She noticed something then, a shape near the water's edge, half hidden beneath a fallen branch. A water bottle. The mother's heart dropped. She stumbled forward and picked it up. Blue plastic. A sticker on the side. An old cartoon character her daughter had loved as a kid. It was hers. The mother looked around wildly, turning in every direction. "Where are you? Answer me." The forest stayed silent. She pulled out her phone again. Still no signal. Her hands shook as she tried to think. Her daughter wouldn't just leave her water bottle. She wouldn't wander off without saying something. Unless something was wrong. The mother started walking along the creek, calling out every few seconds. Her voice grew hoarse. Her throat burned. She checked behind trees, under bushes, anywhere her daughter might have fallen or gotten hurt. But there was nothing. Just the water. Just the trees. Just the crushing, suffocating silence. She didn't know how long she searched. Minutes blurred into an hour. The The sun shifted overhead, casting long shadows. Her phone still had no signal. Her legs trembled from exhaustion. Finally, she turned back toward the trailhead, moving as fast as she could. She had to get help. Had to call someone. When she reached the parking lot, her car was still there, but the other two vehicles were gone. She fumbled for her keys, climbed inside, and drove until her phone buzzed back to life. 3 bars. She pulled over and dialed 911, her voice breaking as she tried to explain. My daughter, she's missing. We were hiking at Shawnee Hills. I can't find her. Please, you have to send someone. The operator's voice was calm, professional. What's your location, ma'am? The mother gave the name of the preserve, the trailhead, everything she could remember. The operator assured her help was on the way. But as she sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the forest that had swallowed her daughter whole, one thought kept looping through her mind. Why didn't I hold on tighter? The first responders arrived within 30 minutes. 2 patrol cars from the Williamson County Sheriff's Department and a ranger vehicle pulled into the lot, their lights flashing against the trees. The mother stumbled out of her car, her legs weak, her face pale. She tried to explain, tried to make them understand, but the words came out broken and scattered. She was just ahead of me. I looked away for a minute, maybe 2, and then she was gone. The officers exchanged glances. One of them, a younger man with a buzz cut, stepped forward. How long has she been missing, ma'am? I don't know. 2 hours? 3? I've been searching. I found her water bottle by the creek, but we're going to find her. Can you show us where you last saw her? The mother nodded, though her body felt like it might collapse at any moment. She led them back up the trail, retracing her steps. Her voice was raw from calling out her daughter's name. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. They reached the spot where the trail split. The officer knelt down, examining the ground. Which way did she go? I don't know, the mother whispered. I thought she went up, but her bottle was down by the water. Another officer spoke into his radio, calling for additional units. We need search and rescue. Missing person. 19-year-old female. Last seen approximately 2 to 3 hours ago at Shawnee Hills Nature Preserve. The words hit her like a punch. Missing person. As if her daughter had simply disappeared into thin air. More vehicles arrived. Volunteers from Marion and the surrounding towns. Search dogs from the Illinois State Police. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, there were over 20 people combing through the preserve. They spread out in lines, calling her daughter's name, checking every trail, every clearing, every shadowed corner of the woods. The mother followed them, refusing to sit still. She couldn't. Every second that passed felt like a betrayal, like she was failing her daughter all over again. One of the volunteers found the water bottle where she'd left it. They bagged it as evidence. Another team followed the creek downstream, searching for any sign of her. Nothing. As darkness fell, they brought in floodlights. The forest transformed into something alien, sharp shadows, glaring white beams cutting through the trees. The search dogs moved in circles, sniffing the ground, trying to pick up a scent. One of the handlers approached the mother. Do you have anything with her scent? A piece of clothing? The mother's mind went blank. She hadn't thought to bring anything. Her hoodie. She was wearing it. But I don't have. It's okay. We'll work with what we have. The dogs moved along the trail, their noses low. They followed the path down to the creek, then stopped. One of them circled the same spot 3 times before sitting down, whining softly. The handler frowned. They're losing the scent here. An officer crouched by the water's edge, shining his flashlight across the surface. Could she have crossed? Not likely. The current's too strong. And there's no sign of disturbance on the other side. The mother felt her chest constrict. What does that mean? The officer didn't answer right away. He stood up slowly, his expression grim. It means we need to expand the search radius. Check further downstream. And he hesitated. And what? We need to consider all possibilities, ma'am. The mother's knees buckled. Someone caught her before she fell. She heard voices around her, calm, steady, trying to reassure, but none of it registered. All she could think about was her daughter. Alone. Or worse. By midnight, they'd covered most of the preserve. Every trail. Every accessible area. The dogs had found nothing beyond the creek. No footprints leading away. No signs of struggle. Just absence. The lead officer pulled the mother aside. His face was kind but tired. "Ma'am, I need you to go home. Get some rest. We're going to keep searching through the night, but you need to take care of yourself." "I can't leave. What if she comes back? What if she's calling for me and I'm not here? We have people stationed at the trailhead. If she comes back, we'll know immediately. But right now, you need to trust us to do our job." The mother wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but her body had nothing left. She let them lead her back to her car. Let them follow her home to Marion to make sure she arrived safely. The house was dark when she pulled into the driveway. Empty. She sat in the car for a long time, staring at the front door, unable to move. Inside, everything was exactly as they'd left it. Her daughter's shoes by the entrance. Her jacket draped over the back of a chair. The coffee mug she'd used that morning, still sitting on the counter. The mother sank onto the couch and waited. Waited for the phone to ring. Waited for the door to open. Waited for her daughter to walk in, laughing about how she'd gotten turned around on the trail and had to find her way back in the dark. But the phone stayed silent. And the door stayed closed. And as the first light of dawn crept through the windows, the mother realized with a hollow, sickening certainty, nothing would ever be the same again. The calls started before sunrise. Friends, neighbors, people she barely knew from Marion and the surrounding communities. All of them asking the same questions. Have they found her? Is there any news? What can we do? The mother couldn't answer. She sat by the phone, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. Every time it rang, her heart lurched. Every time, it was someone else offering condolences she didn't want. Prayers she couldn't accept. Her daughter wasn't dead. She was just missing. There was a difference. There had to be. The detective arrived mid-morning. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She introduced herself as Detective Sarah Brennan from the Illinois State Police Major Crimes Unit, though the name barely registered. "I need to ask you some questions," she said, sitting across from the mother at the kitchen table. "I know this is difficult, but the more information we have, the better chance we have of finding her." The mother nodded, though her throat felt too tight to speak. "When was the last time you saw your daughter?" "On the trail. Around 10, maybe 10:15. She was ahead of me. She always walks faster." "Did she seem upset? Distracted?" The mother hesitated. "She was quiet. On the drive up, she was texting someone." "Do you know who?" "Her boyfriend. Think. She called him Jay." Detective Brennan made a note. "What's his full name?" "Jason. Jason Calloway. They've been dating for about 8 months. He goes to school in Carbondale." How was their relationship? The question landed like a stone. The mother frowned. Fine. Why? Just gathering information. Did they fight? Any tension lately? No. Not that I know of. She seemed happy. But even as she said it, the mother remembered the hesitation in her daughter's voice that morning. The way she'd looked at her phone. The quick deflection when asked if everything was okay. Detective Brennan asked more questions. About her daughter's friends. Her habits. Whether she'd ever run away before. Whether there was anyone who might want to hurt her. The mother answered mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She kept replaying the hike. Kept trying to pinpoint the exact moment things went wrong. Had her daughter said something she'd missed? Had there been a sign, something she should have noticed? Mrs. Hartman? The mother blinked. I'm sorry. What? I asked if your daughter had her phone with her. Yes. She always does. We've been trying to ping it, but it's either off or out of range. Do you know her passcode? No. She never told me. Detective Brennan nodded. We'll work on getting into it. In the meantime, we've issued a statewide alert across Illinois. Her photo's been distributed to every law enforcement agency in the region. We're also coordinating with the media. The more people who know she's missing, the better. The mother nodded numbly. By afternoon, Marion had transformed. Volunteers gathered at the community center, organizing search parties. Flyers appeared on every street lamp, every storefront window. Her daughter's face stared back at her from everywhere, smiling, hopeful, frozen in time. The mother walked through it all in a daze. People hugged her, told her they were praying, promised they'd find her. But their eyes said something different. That night, she lay in her daughter's bed, clutching one of her pillows. It still smelled like her vanilla shampoo and something faintly sweet. The mother pressed her face into it and let herself break. The sobs came hard and violent, tearing through her chest. She cried until she couldn't breathe. Until her ribs ached. Until there was nothing left. When she finally stopped, the silence felt worse. She thought about the last words they'd exchanged. Love you, Mom. Love you too, sweetheart. She thought about all the things she'd never said. The conversations they'd never have. The future that was slipping away with every passing hour. The search dogs had lost the scent by the creek. The officers had found no footprints leading away. No signs of struggle. Just her daughter's water bottle, abandoned by the water's edge. It didn't make sense. People didn't just vanish. But as the hours stretched into days, the mother began to understand something she'd never wanted to accept. Sometimes they did. And sometimes they never came back. By the third day, Marion no longer felt like home. News vans from Chicago, St. Louis, and even national networks lined the streets. Reporters camped outside her house, their cameras pointed at her windows like predators waiting for movement. The mother stopped answering the door. Stopped looking outside. She existed in a fog, moving from room to room, checking her phone obsessively, waiting for a miracle that refused to come. The Shawnee Hills Nature Preserve had become a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the trails. Helicopters circled overhead, their rotors thumping through the air like mechanical heartbeats. Search teams from across southern Illinois continued combing the woods, expanding their radius mile by mile. But they found nothing. The whispers started quietly at first. Murmured conversations at the grocery store, hushed exchanges at the community center. People speculated, theorized, turned her daughter's disappearance into entertainment. Maybe she ran away. Maybe there's a stalker. Maybe the boyfriend did something. The mother heard fragments of it when she ventured out. saw the way people looked at her, with pity, yes, but also curiosity, as if her grief were a spectacle they couldn't look away from. Detective Brennan came by every evening to update her. The news was always the same. No leads. No sightings. No body. That last word hung in the air between them, unspoken but impossible to ignore. On the fourth day, they recovered her daughter's phone. A hiker found it half buried near a steep ridge, about a quarter-mile from where the water bottle had been. The screen was cracked. The battery dead. Detective Brennan brought it to her in an evidence bag. "We'll need to send this to our forensics lab in Springfield. See if we can recover any data." The mother stared at it through the plastic. "Such a small thing. Such a lifeline. Can I see it?" "Not yet. Once we've processed it, we'll share whatever we find." "What if there's something on there? A message? A location?" "We'll check everything. I promise." But when the results came back 2 days later, they only deepened the mystery. The phone had been wiped. Not damaged. Not broken. Deliberately erased. Every text message. Every photo. Every call log. Gone. Detective Brennan's voice was careful when she delivered the news. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. This wasn't accidental. The mother felt her world tilt. "So someone took her. We're investigating all possibilities. But someone did this. Someone hurt her." Detective Brennan didn't answer. She didn't have to. The volunteers continued searching. The local news from Harrisburg, Carbondale, and Marion ran daily updates. Her daughter's face appeared on missing person websites, shared thousands of times across social media. Tips came in, most of them useless. Someone claimed to have seen her at a gas station in Kentucky. Another insisted she'd been spotted getting into a white van near the Indiana border. None of it led anywhere. The mother stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She sat in her daughter's room for hours, surrounded by the life her daughter had built. Posters on the walls. Books stacked on the nightstand. A half-finished journal lying open on the desk. She picked it up one night and read the last entry. "Sometimes I don't know if what I feel is real or if I'm just scared of being alone. He says he loves me, but love shouldn't feel like this. Should it?" The mother's breath caught. She read it again. And again. "He says he loves me, but love shouldn't feel like this." Who was she talking about? Jason? The mother grabbed her phone and called Detective Brennan. "I found something. In her journal." She was worried about someone. About a relationship. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. When the detective arrived, the mother handed her the journal with shaking hands. Brennan read the entry, her expression unreadable. "We've already spoken to Jason Calloway," she said. "He's cooperating fully." But what if she was scared of him? What if something was wrong and I didn't see it? "We'll look into it. I promise." But the mother could see the doubt in her eyes. The hesitation. She was starting to realize that promises didn't mean much anymore. That night, unable to sleep, she went back to the preserve. She wasn't supposed to. The trails were still closed. But she needed to be there. Needed to walk the path her daughter had walked. Needed to feel close to her, even if it was only in memory. The forest was different at night. Darker. Quieter. Her flashlight beam cut through the blackness, illuminating trees that seemed to lean in too close. She followed the main trail, her footsteps echoing softly. When she reached the spot where the path split, she stopped. This was where she'd lost her. This was where everything changed. She stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of the creek rushing somewhere in the distance. The wind moved through the leaves overhead, a low, mournful whisper. And then she heard something else. Footstep. The mother spun around, her flashlight sweeping across the trees. Hello. Nothing. Her heart pounded. Who's there? Silence. She started walking back toward the trailhead, faster now. The footsteps followed, not close but present, just out of sight. She broke into a run. When she reached the parking lot, gasping for air, she turned back one last time. The forest stood still, empty, watching. But she knew someone had been there. Someone was still there. And they were waiting. Jason Calloway showed up at the vigil on the 5th night. The mother hadn't planned to attend. She couldn't bear the thought of standing in front of a crowd while candles flickered and people offered hollow words of comfort. But Detective Brennan had suggested it, gently, carefully, as if her presence might somehow draw her daughter back. So she went. The turnout was larger than she'd expected. Hundreds of people gathered in Marion's town square, holding candles that swayed in the evening breeze. Someone had set up a photo of her daughter on an easel near the front, the same one from the trail, her smile bright and unguarded. The mother stood apart from the crowd, her arms wrapped around herself. She couldn't look at anyone, couldn't stand the weight of their sympathy. And then she saw him. Jason appeared near the back, clutching a bouquet of white lilies. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. He moved through the crowd slowly, his head down, as if the weight of every gaze might crush him. When he reached the front, he placed the flowers at the base of the easel and stepped back. His shoulders shook. A sob escaped him, raw and broken. The mother watched him, her chest tight. He looked devastated, genuinely destroyed. And yet, something felt wrong. She couldn't name it, couldn't put her finger on the exact detail that didn't fit. But it was there, a discordance, subtle but present. After the vigil, Detective Brennan pulled her aside. We need to talk about Jason. What about him? We've been digging into his background, checking his alibi for the day your daughter disappeared. And? Brennan hesitated. He told us he was home all day in Carbondale. But we pulled traffic camera footage from Route 13 near the turnoff to Shawnee Hills. His car was captured heading east toward the preserve around 8:45 that morning. The mother's blood ran cold. He was there. We don't know. The camera only catches the highway. But it's concerning. Why would he lie? That's what we're trying to figure out. They brought him in for questioning the next day at the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. The mother wasn't allowed to be there, but Detective Brennan gave her the details afterward. Jason had been nervous, defensive. He'd insisted he hadn't gone to the preserve, that the camera must have caught someone else's car. But when pressed, he'd admitted he'd been driving around that morning, just clearing his head, he said. Thinking. About what? Brennan had asked. About us. About her. Were you two having problems? A long pause. Then, we'd been fighting. Nothing serious. Just stress. What were you fighting about? Another pause. Longer this time. She wanted space. Said she needed time to think. And how did that make you feel? Upset. But I wasn't angry. I loved her. Past tense. The detective had caught it too. They'd searched his apartment in Carbondale with his consent. Found nothing incriminating. No blood. No signs of struggle. His computer history was clean. Mostly social media, gaming forums, streaming sites. But then the tech team dug deeper. Buried in his deleted files, they found something. A folder labeled Backup, containing screenshots of text conversations. Private messages. Photos his girlfriend had sent him, intimate ones, meant only for him. And beneath those, a series of searches from the night before she disappeared. How to track someone's phone without them knowing. What to do if your girlfriend wants to break up. Can deleted messages be recovered? When confronted, Jason had broken down. I was just scared, okay? I didn't want to lose her. I thought if I could figure out what she was thinking, maybe I could fix things. Fix things how? I don't know. I needed to understand. They'd asked him about the preserve, about why his car had been heading toward Shawnee Hills that morning. I told you. I was driving around. I didn't go there. Then where did you go? I don't remember. I was just driving. They'd administered a polygraph test at the Illinois State Police facility. It wasn't admissible in court, but it could point them in the right direction. Jason passed. Every question, every answer. The needle barely moved. Either he was telling the truth, or he was a convincing liar. When Detective Brennan told the mother, she felt something inside her crack. So what now? We just let him go. We don't have enough to hold him. No physical evidence linking him to the scene. No witnesses. The search history is suspicious, but it's not proof of anything. He lied about being there. He says he didn't go to the preserve. And without evidence proving otherwise, we can't charge him. The mother wanted to scream, wanted to grab Brennan by the shoulders and shake her until she understood. He did something. I know he did. But she didn't. She just nodded, her jaw tight, her hands clenched into fists. That night, she drove past Jason's apartment in Carbondale, sat in her car across the street, staring up at his window. The lights were on. She could see his silhouette moving back and forth. What was he doing in there? Was he grieving? Panicking? Planning his next move? She thought about her daughter's journal entry. Love shouldn't feel like this. Had he hurt her? Had he followed her onto the trail, confronted her, and the thought made her sick. But as the days passed, the focus shifted. New leads emerged. Other suspects. And Jason Calloway faded into the background. A person of interest who never quite became more than that. The mother, though, never forgot. She couldn't. Because deep down, beneath the grief and exhaustion, a quiet certainty had taken root. Someone knew what happened. And they were still out there. On the 8th day, the dogs found something. The mother was at home in Marion when the call came. Detective Brennan's voice was careful, measured. We need you to come down to the station. There's been a development. Her heart stopped. Did you find her? The pause. Too long. We'll explain everything when you get here. The drive to the Williamson County Sheriff's Office felt endless. Every red light, every slow-moving car, an eternity. When she finally arrived, Brennan was waiting outside. Her expression said everything. No, the mother whispered. No, no, no. Brennan caught her before she fell. I'm so sorry. They'd found her daughter deep in the woods, miles from where anyone had thought to search. The search dogs had picked up a scent near an old service road, barely more than a tire track cutting through dense brush on the eastern edge of the preserve. They'd followed it to a ravine, where the ground sloped sharply down toward a dry creek bed. She'd been buried beneath leaves and broken branches. Hastily covered. Meant to stay hidden. The mother couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The world collapsed into a single, unbearable truth. Her daughter was gone. She demanded to see her. Brennan tried to dissuade her, gently, firmly, but the mother wouldn't listen. She needed to see. Needed to know it was real. They took her to the morgue at Heron Hospital. Led her into a cold, sterile room that smelled of disinfectant and something else, something she'd never be able to forget. The body on the table was covered with a white sheet. Brennan pulled it back slowly, revealing only her daughter's face. The mother's knees gave out. It was her. But it wasn't. The girl on the table looked like a photograph left too long in the sun. Faded, distant, wrong. Her skin was pale. Her lips colorless. The spark that had made her alive, the warmth, the laughter, the dreams, was gone. The mother reached out, her hand trembling. She touched her daughter's cheek. It was cold. So cold. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Brennan's hand was on her shoulder, but the mother barely felt it. She stood there, staring at her daughter's face, memorizing every detail. The small scar above her eyebrow from when she'd fallen off her bike at 12. The freckles across her nose that darkened in summer. The way her hair fell even now. "Can I have a moment?" the mother asked, her voice barely audible. Brennan nodded and stepped outside. The mother pulled a chair close and sat down. She took her daughter's hand, so small, so still, and held it between both of hers. "I kept my promise," she said. "I came back for you. I never stopped looking." The tears came slowly at first, then all at once. She laid her head on the edge of the table and sobbed, her entire body shaking. She cried for the future her daughter would never have. For the graduation she'd never attend. For the wedding she'd never dance at. For the grandchildren who would never exist. She cried until there was nothing left. When she finally lifted her head, she looked at her daughter one last time. "Rest now, sweetheart. I'll take it from here." Outside, the sun was setting over southern Illinois. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, beautiful and wrong. The world kept turning, indifferent to her pain. Detective Brennan was waiting by her car. "The autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow morning. We'll know more then." The mother nodded numbly. "Is there anyone I can call? Someone who can stay with you tonight?" "No. I need to be alone." Brennan hesitated, then handed her a card. "My cell number's on there. Day or night. If you need anything, find who did this. We will. I promise you." The mother looked at her. "Don't make promises you can't keep." She drove home in silence, the streets of Marion passing by like a dream. When she pulled into her driveway, the reporters were waiting. Their cameras flashed. Their voices called out questions she couldn't hear. She pushed through them without a word and locked herself inside. The house felt different now. Emptier. As if her daughter's absence had become a physical presence, filling every room with silence. The mother walked to her daughter's bedroom and stood in the doorway. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The unmade bed. The clothes draped over the chair. The photos pinned to the bulletin board. Snapshots of a life cut short. She stepped inside and picked up a stuffed bear from the bed. Her daughter had slept with it every night until she was 14. She'd been embarrassed by it, but she'd never thrown it away. The mother pressed it to her chest and sank onto the bed. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay in her daughter's room, surrounded by memories, and listened to the house settle around her. Somewhere in the darkness, a question took root. Not why did this happen, but who? Who had taken her daughter into those woods? Who had stolen her future? Who had left her buried beneath leaves and branches, as if she were nothing? The mother's grief began to harden into something else. Something colder. Something that wouldn't rest until it had answers. The autopsy results came back 3 days later. Detective Brennan delivered them in person, sitting across from the mother at the kitchen table. Her voice was professional, but her eyes held something deeper, anger, maybe, or sorrow. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Multiple strikes. She also had defensive wounds on her hands and forearms. The mother's stomach turned. She fought back. Yes. She fought hard. How long? How long was she out there? Brennan's jaw tightened. The medical examiner estimates she died within hours of when you last saw her. Probably that same afternoon. The mother closed her eyes. While she'd been searching, calling out her daughter's name, her daughter had already been gone. Already buried. Already beyond saving. There's more, Brennan continued. We found trace evidence under her fingernails. Skin cells. Someone else's DNA. The mother's eyes snapped open. Whose? We don't know yet. It's not in the system. But whoever killed her, she scratched them. She left us a clue. Hope flickered for the first time in days. So you can find them. If we have a suspect to compare it to, yes. We're running it through every database we have access to. Federal, state, local. If this person has ever been arrested, if they've ever submitted DNA for any reason, we'll find them. But days passed, and the DNA didn't match anyone. Not Jason Calloway. They'd tested him immediately, and he'd agreed without hesitation. The results were clear. He wasn't the killer. The mother didn't know whether to feel relief or frustration. Part of her had wanted it to be him. Wanted a face to attach to her rage. But the DNA told a different story. The investigation shifted. Detectives from the Illinois State Police interviewed everyone who'd been at the preserve that day. They tracked down the owners of the two cars that had been in the parking lot. The silver sedan belonged to a couple from Indiana who'd left before 9:30. The blue pickup truck had been reported stolen 3 weeks earlier and recovered abandoned in Missouri. Dead end after dead end. The town changed as the investigation dragged on. At first, there had been unity, a collective determination to find answers. But as weeks turned into months, that unity fractured. Some people believed the killer was a stranger, a drifter passing through southern Illinois. Someone who'd seen an opportunity and taken it. Others whispered darker theories. That it was someone local. Someone they all knew. Someone who'd hidden among them all along. Neighbors began to eye each other with suspicion. Friendships dissolved. The mother could feel it whenever she left the house. The way people's conversations stopped when she approached. The way they avoided her eyes. She became a reminder of what they all feared most. That evil wasn't always a stranger. That it could be anyone. Jason Calloway left Carbondale mid-semester. His parents enrolled him in a school in Arizona, far from the whispers and accusations. Before he left, he came to see the mother. She'd almost refused to let him in. But something in his voice when he called, a brokenness that mirrored her own, made her relent. He stood in her living room, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, unable to meet her eyes. I didn't hurt her, he said. I need you to know that. I loved her. I would never. Then why did you lie about being near the preserve? He flinched. I was ashamed. We'd fought the night before. She told me she needed space. I was scared I was losing her. So yeah, I drove around that morning. I ended up on Route 13, just thinking. But I didn't go to the preserve. I swear. Do you know who did? He shook his head, tears spilling down his cheeks. I wish I did. I wish I could take it back. The fight. Everything. I'd give anything to have said something different that night. The mother studied him. He looked like a boy playing at being a man, lost, scared, drowning in guilt he didn't know how to process. What did you fight about? She asked quietly. Jason hesitated. She said I was too controlling, that I checked her phone too much, asked too many questions about where she was and who she was with. I thought I was just being careful, protective, but she said it felt like I didn't trust her. The journal entry flashed through the mother's mind. Love shouldn't feel like this. And did you trust her? He looked down. I wanted to, but I kept thinking, what if she found someone better? What if I wasn't enough? The mother felt a wave of sadness. Not for him, for her daughter. For the way she'd been loved with suspicion instead of freedom. For the weight she'd carried in a relationship that should have made her feel light. You should go, the mother said. Start over somewhere else. Jason nodded. I'm sorry. For everything. I hope they find who did this. After he left, the mother sat alone in the silence. She believed him. He hadn't killed her daughter. But he hadn't saved her either. None of them had. Detective Brennan continued working the case with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She interviewed hikers, checked old police reports, searched for similar crimes in neighboring states. She brought in FBI profilers who studied the crime scene photos and built psychological profiles of the killer. Well, this is likely local or familiar with the area. Opportunistic rather than premeditated. Someone who knew the preserve well enough to find that old service road. Someone strong enough to overpower a 19-year-old girl and carry her body into the ravine. But profiles didn't give them a name. The mother threw herself into advocacy work. She couldn't sit still. Couldn't accept that her daughter's case might go cold. She started a foundation, Justice for the Lost, focused on missing and murdered women in Illinois. She organized awareness campaigns, lobbied for better funding for cold case units, spoke at vigils for other families drowning in the same nightmare. She became a voice for the voiceless. But at night, alone in her house, she was still just a mother who'd lost her daughter. The first year passed. Then the second. The third. The case grew cold. Leads dried up. The media moved on to newer tragedies. The volunteers stopped calling. Even Detective Brennan's visits became less frequent, though she never stopped working the case behind the scenes. Jason Calloway graduated from his new school in Arizona and moved to California. The mother heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd gotten engaged. She felt nothing when she heard the news. Not anger. Not resentment. Just a hollow sort of acknowledgement that life went on for everyone except her. The town slowly returned to normal. The preserve reopened. People hiked the trails again, though many avoided the eastern section where her daughter had been found. The mother visited the site often. She'd hike in alone, carrying a single white flower, and lay it at the spot where her daughter's life had ended. She'd sit there for hours, talking to her daughter as if she could hear, telling her about the foundation, about the families they were helping, about the difference her death, unbearable as it was, had made. But she never stopped asking the question that haunted her. Who did this? By the 5th year, she'd almost given up hope of ever knowing. And then, one morning, her phone rang. Detective Brennan's voice was different. Urgent. Almost breathless. Mrs. Hartman? I need you to sit down. We've found something. The mother's hand tightened around the phone. What is it? The DNA. We got a hit. Everything stopped. Who? I'm coming to see you. I'll be there in an hour. But Mrs. Hartman, this changes everything. The mother waited by the window, watching the street. Every car that passed sent her heart racing. Every sound made her turn. 5 years. 5 years of waiting, searching, demanding answers. And now, finally, they had one. When Detective Brennan's car pulled up, the mother was already at the door. Brennan looked older than she had 5 years ago. Lines had deepened around her eyes. Her hair had more gray. But there was something else too, a fire that hadn't been there in months. Purpose. She sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out a folder. The cold case unit has been systematically retesting evidence from unsolved crimes across Illinois using new DNA technology, she began. It's been slow work, but we've been making progress. 3 weeks ago, we submitted your daughter's case for reanalysis. The mother leaned forward, and the DNA we recovered from under her fingernails, we got a match. To who? Brennan's expression hardened. A man named Marcus Webb, 43 years old, lived in Marion at the time of your daughter's death. He was a contractor, married, no criminal record, nothing that would have put him in the system back then. The name meant nothing to the mother. How did you get his DNA now? He was arrested 6 months ago in Kentucky. Assault charge. They took his DNA as part of the booking process and uploaded it to the national database. When we ran your daughter's evidence through the new system, it pinged. Marcus Webb. The mother repeated the name silently, trying to place it. Did I know him? Brennan pulled out a photograph. An older one, from 5 years ago. A man with dark hair, average build, ordinary face. The kind of face that disappeared in a crowd. The mother stared at it, searching her memory. And then it clicked. He was at the vigil, she whispered. Brennan nodded. He was one of the volunteers who helped search for your daughter. He was at multiple search efforts. He attended vigils. He hugged me, the mother said, the memory flooding back with sickening clarity. He told me he was praying for us. She couldn't finish. The room tilted. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. The man who'd killed her daughter had stood beside her, had looked her in the eyes, had touched her, had pretended to care. Where is he now? She managed. Still in custody in Kentucky. We've already started extradition proceedings. He'll be back in Illinois within the week. Does he know you've matched his DNA? Not yet. We wanted to coordinate with prosecutors first. Build the strongest case possible. The mother's mind raced. What about his wife? Did she know? We're looking into that. But from what we've learned so far, she had no idea. She filed for divorce after his arrest in Kentucky. She's been cooperating with us. What else did you find? Brennan hesitated. We executed a search warrant on his old property. He sold the house 3 years ago, but we were able to get access. We found something hidden in the crawl space. She pulled out another photo. A necklace. Silver with a small heart-shaped pendant. The mother's breath caught. That's hers. I gave that to her for her 16th birthday. We also found a journal. His journal. Mrs. Hartman, I need to prepare you. It's disturbing. He documented fantasies about women he'd seen around town. Your daughter was mentioned specifically, multiple times. The mother felt bile rise in her throat. He was stalking her. It appears so. We're also looking at other unsolved cases in the region. There are similarities. You think he killed others? We don't know yet, but we're investigating every possibility. The mother stood up, suddenly unable to sit still. She paced the kitchen, her hands shaking. 5 years. For 5 years, Marcus Webb had walked free, had lived his life, had gone to work, come home to his wife, slept in his bed at night, all while her daughter lay cold in the ground. I want to be there, she said, when you arrest him, when you bring him back. I can't allow that. but I can promise you'll be kept informed every step of the way. I want to face him. In court. I want him to see what he took from me." Brennan reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You'll get that chance. I promise you." This time, the mother believed her. The news broke 2 days later. Arrest made in 5-year cold case. The media descended on Marion once again. But this time, the mother didn't hide. She stood in front of the cameras and spoke clearly, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "For 5 years, I've waited for this moment. For 5 years, I've carried my daughter's memory and demanded justice. Today we're one step closer. But this isn't just about my daughter. This is about every missing person, every unsolved case, every family still waiting for answers. We don't forget. We don't give up. And we don't stop until the truth comes to light." The clip went viral. It was shared across Illinois, across the country. The mother became a symbol, not of victimhood, but of relentless pursuit of justice. Behind the scenes, prosecutors built their case. The DNA evidence was irrefutable. The journal entries were damning. And as they dug deeper into Marcus Webb's life, more evidence emerged. Photos on his old computer, women taken without their knowledge. Dozens of them. Some at parks. Some at shopping centers. Some at the very preserve where her daughter had died. He'd been hunting, and her daughter had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. When they showed the mother the full extent of what they'd found, she felt something inside her shift. The grief that had consumed her for 5 years began to transform into something sharper. Something focused. This wasn't just about her daughter anymore. This was about making sure Marcus Webb never hurt anyone again. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 months later. The mother prepared herself mentally, emotionally. She knew it would be brutal. Knew she'd have to hear details she tried not to imagine. But she was ready. Because finally, her daughter's voice would be heard. And Marcus Webb would have to answer for what he'd done. The mother marked the 5th anniversary of her daughter's death at the memorial site in the preserve. The town had dedicated a small clearing near the main trail, not where her daughter's body had been found, but close enough. A wooden bench sat beneath an oak tree, a bronze plaque mounted on its back. In memory of Emily Grace Hartman, 1999 to 2018, forever in our hearts. The mother had objected to the wording at first. Too generic. Too impersonal. But over time, she'd made peace with it. Because the memorial wasn't really for her daughter. It was for the town. A way for them to feel like they'd done something, contributed something. Her real memorial was different. It was the foundation. The advocacy work. The 11 families she'd helped get their cold cases reopened. The 3 arrests that had come from renewed investigations. Her daughter's death had not been in vain. But it still hurt. Every single day. The mother sat on the bench, a single white flower in her lap, and watched the morning light filter through the leaves. 5 years. Her daughter would have been 24 now. Would have graduated college. Would have started a career, maybe gotten married, maybe given her grandchildren. All those futures, erased in an instant. "I kept my promise," she said softly. "I never stopped fighting." The wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and earth. The same smells from that morning 5 years ago. The mother's phone buzzed. A text from Detective Brennan. "Call me when you can. Important update." She stood, placed the flower at the base of the oak tree, and walked back to her car. Brennan met her at a coffee shop in Marion, neutral territory, away from the station and its memories. "Marcus Webb is being extradited tomorrow. Brennan said without preamble. He'll be arraigned within 48 hours. The mother's pulse quickened. What did he say when you told him about the DNA? He lawyered up immediately. Hasn't said a word since. But his attorney's already floating a defense strategy. What kind of defense? They're claiming consensual encounter gone wrong. That your daughter knew him, that they'd been involved. That her death was accidental. The mother's hands clenched into fists. That's a lie. I know. And we can prove it. The journal entries alone destroy that narrative. He was stalking her. She didn't know him. Are you sure? Brennan's expression softened. I've been through your daughter's entire life, Mrs. Hartman. Her phone records, her social media, her friends' testimonies. There's no connection between them. He's lying. Then why claim it? Because it's all he has. If he can create reasonable doubt about the nature of their interaction, maybe he can get the charges reduced. But it won't work. We have too much evidence. The mother took a breath. What about the other women? The photos you found? We've identified most of them. We're interviewing each one to see if Webb ever approached them, followed them, anything that might establish a pattern. So far, 2 have come forward with complaints. Nothing they reported at the time, just uncomfortable encounters. One said he showed up at her workplace multiple times. Another said he followed her car. Was he escalating? It looks that way. The forensic psychologist believes your daughter wasn't his first victim, but she might have been his first kill. The mother felt sick. There are others? We're investigating 3 missing persons cases from surrounding counties. Women who disappeared between 2015 and 2017. Similar circumstances, isolated areas, no witnesses, no clear suspect. We're comparing DNA from those scenes to Webb's profile. And if it matches? Then he's looking at multiple murder charges. The mother stared out the window at the quiet street. Her daughter's death had opened a door to something much darker. Something that had been hiding in plain sight. How did nobody see this? She asked. How did he just live among us? Because people like Marcus Webb are good at hiding, Brennan said. They look normal. Act normal. They have jobs, families, friends. They blend in. That's what makes them dangerous. The mother thought about the vigil 5 years ago. The way Marcus Webb had approached her with tears in his eyes. The way he'd embraced her, whispered that he was praying for her family. Had he enjoyed it? Had it given him some twisted thrill to stand there, knowing what he'd done? I want to attend the arraignment, she said. I figured you would. I'll make sure you have a seat. Will he see me? He'll see you. Good, the mother thought. She wanted him to see her. Wanted him to know that she'd never stopped. Never given up. That her daughter's voice, silenced that day in the woods, had found a new vessel. And that voice would not be quiet until justice was served. The night before the arraignment, the mother couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind churning through everything she wanted to say. Everything she wanted to scream at Marcus Webb. But she knew she wouldn't get the chance. Not yet. The arraignment would be brief, charges read, plea entered, bail discussed. The real confrontation would come later at trial. Still, she rehearsed it in her mind. You took my daughter. You stole her future. You tried to erase her, bury her like she was nothing. But she was everything. And I won't let you forget that. At some point, exhaustion overtook her, and she drifted into a fitful sleep. She dreamed of the trail, of her daughter walking ahead, just out of reach. She called out, but her daughter didn't turn. Just kept walking deeper into the trees, until the forest swallowed her whole. The mother woke with tears on her face. The clock read 4:47 a.m. She got up, showered, dressed carefully. She chose a simple black dress, dignified but not mournful. She wanted Marcus Webb to see strength, not brokenness. At 8 o'clock, Detective Brennan picked her up. They drove to the courthouse in silence. When they arrived, media vans already lined the street. Reporters clustered near the entrance, cameras ready. The mother had expected this. She'd prepared herself. Brennan led her through a side entrance, avoiding the circus outside. They took an elevator to the 3rd floor, where the courtroom was located. "Are you ready?" Brennan asked. The mother nodded. They entered the courtroom. It was smaller than she'd expected. Wooden benches, fluorescent lights, an American flag hanging limply in the corner. A few people were already seated: prosecutors, court staff, a handful of reporters who'd gotten inside early. The mother took a seat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution's table. And then she waited. 10 minutes later, a door at the side of the room opened, and Marcus Webb was led inside. He looked smaller than she remembered. 5 years ago, at the vigil, Marcus Webb had seemed solid, present. His tears had been convincing, his embrace firm. He'd been a man offering comfort, and she'd believed him. But now, in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, he looked diminished. His hair was thinner, streaked with more gray. His face was drawn, his shoulders hunched. He moved slowly, shuffling between two bailiffs. And yet, when his eyes swept the courtroom, there was something there. Something cold and calculating. His gaze landed on her. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The mother didn't blink, didn't look away. She wanted him to see her, to know that she was there, and she wasn't going anywhere. Something flickered across his face, recognition maybe, or fear. The judge entered, and everyone stood. The proceedings began with mechanical efficiency. The charges were read aloud: murder in the first degree, kidnapping, tampering with evidence. Marcus Webb's attorney, a thin man in an expensive suit, entered a plea of not guilty. The prosecutor argued against bail, cited the severity of the charges, the DNA evidence, the journal entries, the risk of flight. The defense argued that Webb had ties to the community, no prior record, and deserved the presumption of innocence. The judge listened impassively, then made his ruling. Bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. The mother felt a small measure of relief. At least he wouldn't be walking free. At least he'd wait behind bars, the way her daughter had waited beneath the earth. As the bailiffs led Webb away, he glanced back one more time. This time, the mother smiled. A cold, hard smile that said, "I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not done." After the arraignment, the prosecutor, a woman named Rachel Chen, pulled the mother aside. "I wanted to talk to you about the trial," Chen said. "It's going to be difficult. The defense will try to paint your daughter in a negative light. They'll dig into her personal life, her relationship with Jason Calloway, anything they can use to create doubt." "Let them try," the mother said. "She has nothing to hide." "I know, but I need you to be prepared. They'll also likely call you to testify. They'll ask you about that day, about your relationship with your daughter, about whether you noticed anyone following you." "I didn't. I've gone over it 1,000 times. I never saw him." "That's okay. The DNA speaks for itself. But your testimony will be important for the jury. They need to see her as a real person, not just a victim. A daughter. A young woman with dreams and plans." The mother nodded. "When will the trial start?" "Probably 6 to 8 months. We need time to build the case, depose witnesses, prepare exhibits. But I promise you, Mrs. Hartman, we're going to get justice for your daughter. I know you will, because I'm going to be there every single day. Watching, waiting, making sure he can't hide anymore." Chen smiled. "I wouldn't expect anything less." As the months passed, more details about Marcus Webb's life emerged. He'd been married for 15 years. His wife, Amanda, had filed for divorce the moment she learned about the charges. In her deposition, she described a man who was controlling but careful, who tracked her movements but never raised his voice, who seemed charming to outsiders but cold at home. She'd never suspected he was capable of violence. But looking back, she admitted there had been signs. Times when he'd disappear for hours and refuse to explain where he'd been. Times when she'd found him looking at his computer late at night, quickly closing windows when she entered the room. She'd thought he was having an affair. She'd never imagined he was hunting. Investigators also uncovered Webb's connection to the preserve. He'd worked on construction projects in the area years earlier, including maintenance on some of the service roads. He knew the layout intimately, knew which areas were remote, which paths were rarely traveled. He'd been preparing. The photos found on his computer were organized by date. The earliest ones went back to 2014, 4 years before Emily's death. Dozens of women. Some taken at the preserve. Some at grocery stores, parks, shopping centers across southern Illinois. The mother looked through them with Detective Brennan, trying to see if she recognized anyone, trying to understand the scope of what Webb had been doing. In one folder, she found a photo that made her blood run cold. It was her daughter, taken at the community center in Marion about 6 months before she died. She was laughing, talking with friends, completely unaware she was being watched. "He'd been following her for months," the mother whispered. Brennan nodded grimly. "It looks that way." The mother stared at the photo. Her daughter looked so alive, so happy, so oblivious to the dangers circling her. "Why her?" she asked. "Why my daughter?" I don't know if there's a rational answer to that. Maybe she smiled at him once. Maybe she reminded him of someone. Maybe it was completely random. But whatever the reason, he fixated on her. And once he did, he didn't stop. The mother closed her eyes. "She never had a chance, did she?" "No," Brennan said quietly. "I don't think she did." The trial date was set for October, 5.5 years after Emily's death. The mother prepared herself. She attended every pretrial hearing, read every document, memorized every piece of evidence. She also continued her advocacy work, using her platform to raise awareness about stalking, about the warning signs families should watch for, about the importance of reporting suspicious behavior. She spoke at conferences, at police training sessions, at victim support groups. She became a voice not just for her daughter, but for all the others, the ones who'd been silenced, forgotten, buried beneath leaves and lies. And as the trial date approached, she felt something shift inside her. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But alongside it was something else now. Purpose. Her daughter's death had given her a mission, and she would see it through to the end, no matter how long it took, no matter how painful it became. She would stand in that courtroom and look Marcus Webb in the eyes and tell the world what he'd taken. And she would make sure he never took anything from anyone ever again. The morning they brought Marcus Webb back to Illinois, the mother stood outside the Williamson County Jail and watched the transport van pull in. She wasn't supposed to be there. Detective Brennan had warned her against it. Too much media attention, too much risk of compromising the case. But she couldn't stay away. She needed to see him. Needed to watch him step onto Illinois soil and know that he was back where he belonged. Where he would finally face what he'd done. The van doors opened, and 2 U.S. Marshals led Webb out in chains. He squinted against the sunlight, his face pale from months in a Kentucky jail cell. He looked thinner than he had at the arraignment. More worn down. But when he saw the cameras, something changed in his expression. He straightened, lifted his chin, almost as if he were trying to project innocence. The mother felt rage boil in her chest. How dare you? How dare you stand there and pretend you're the victim? She wanted to rush forward, to scream in his face, to make him acknowledge what he'd done. But she held herself still. This wasn't the time. That moment would come. As the marshals led Webb inside, he glanced toward the crowd of reporters and onlookers. His eyes found hers. For a second, just 1 second, his mask slipped. She saw it then. The cold, empty thing that lived behind his eyes. The thing that had watched her daughter on that trail. The thing that had decided she was prey. And then it was gone, replaced by manufactured confusion and fear. But the mother had seen it, and she would never forget. Inside the jail, Webb was processed and placed in isolation. His attorney filed motions to suppress evidence, to delay the trial, to challenge the DNA results. Every legal maneuver possible. But the prosecution was ready. Rachel Chen and her team had built a case so airtight, so overwhelming, that even the defense couldn't find cracks. The DNA under Emily's fingernails matched Marcus Webb. Irrefutable. The journal entries described fantasies involving young women matching Emily's description. Damning. The necklace hidden in his crawl space belonged to Emily. Verified. And now, in the final weeks before trial, they'd uncovered something else. Security footage. A gas station on Route 13, less than 2 miles from the Shawnee Hills Nature Preserve entrance. The camera had captured a blue pickup truck pulling in on the morning of June 16, 2018, at 9:52 a.m. The same truck that had been reported stolen weeks before Emily's death. And behind the wheel, grainy but identifiable, was Marcus Webb. The timestamp placed him at the preserve within the window when Emily disappeared. Chen called the mother with the news. "This is the final piece," she said. "He can't claim he wasn't there anymore. We have him on camera, in the stolen vehicle, minutes before your daughter vanished." The mother pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart race. Why did it take so long to find this? The gas station security system was outdated. The footage was recorded over after 30 days. But the owner kept backup drives in storage. He just never told the police 5 years ago. When we canvassed again, asking about any preserved footage from that time period, he remembered. Can the defense challenge it? They'll try. But we've had 3 independent analysts verify the timestamp and the image quality. It's Webb. No question. The mother closed her eyes. Then we have him. Yes. We have him. The prosecution also discovered something else in Webb's background, something that painted an even darker picture. In 2009, he'd been questioned in connection with a missing person case in Kentucky. A 21-year-old college student who disappeared after hiking alone in Red River Gorge. No charges had been filed. No evidence connected him. But his name had appeared in the investigation notes as someone who'd been in the area that weekend, working a construction job nearby. The student's body had never been found. Detective Brennan flew to Kentucky to review the old case files. She interviewed the original investigators, now retired. One of them remembered Webb clearly. He was cooperative, the former detective told Brennan. answered all our questions, seemed genuinely concerned about the missing girl. But there was something about him I couldn't shake. The way he talked about her, like he knew her. But when we checked, there was no connection. So we moved on. Brennan pulled the DNA from Emily's case and requested a comparison with any evidence from the Kentucky case. 3 weeks later, the results came back. Inconclusive. The Kentucky case had no viable DNA evidence to compare. But Brennan wasn't giving up. She expanded her search, every missing person case within a 200-mile radius of Marion between 2010 and 2018. Every unsolved murder involving young women. She found 2 more cases that raised red flags. A hiker in Missouri, 2015. Disappeared from a state park. Found 6 months later, badly decomposed. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. A college student in Indiana, 2016. Vanished after leaving a campus party. Body discovered in a wooded area 3 weeks later. Cause of death, strangulation. Both crime scenes had preserved DNA evidence. Both samples were sent to the lab for comparison with Marcus Webb's profile. The mother waited for the results with a mixture of hope and horror. Hope that they could give other families closure. Horror at the possibility that Webb had been killing for years, and no one had stopped him. While they waited, the trial preparation continued. The prosecution built their witness list. The medical examiner who'd performed Emily's autopsy. The forensic technician who'd processed the DNA. The gas station owner who'd provided the security footage. Detective Brennan, who would walk the jury through the entire investigation. And the mother herself. Chen prepared her carefully. They spent hours going over what she'd be asked, how to answer clearly without becoming emotional, how to handle cross-examination from the defense. They're going to try to rattle you, Chen warned. They'll suggest you weren't paying enough attention that day. That you can't be sure your daughter didn't know Webb. That maybe she'd met him before and never mentioned it. None of that's true. I know. But they'll try anyway. Just stay calm. Stick to what you know. Don't let them put words in your mouth. The mother nodded. She'd faced worse than a defense attorney. She'd faced 5 years of silence. 5 years of not knowing. 5 years of watching her daughter's killer walk free. She could face anything now. 2 weeks before the trial, the DNA results from the Missouri and Indiana cases came back. Positive match. Marcus Webb's DNA was found at both crime scenes. Chen called an emergency press conference. Marcus Webb is now facing 3 counts of first-degree murder, she announced to a packed room of reporters. Evidence has linked him to the deaths of Emily Hartman in Illinois, Jessica Crawford in Missouri, and Stephanie Mills in Indiana. We believe there may be additional victims, and we're working with law enforcement agencies across multiple states to investigate further. The room erupted with questions. The mother sat in the front row, watching Chen field them with professional precision. She thought about the other families, about Jessica Crawford's mother, about Stephanie Mills's father, about how they'd waited, just like her, for answers that seemed like they'd never come. They'd gotten those answers now. But like her, they'd learned that answers didn't heal the wound. They only explained it. Marcus Webb's attorney held his own press conference the next day. My client maintains his innocence, the lawyer said. The prosecution's case is built on circumstantial evidence and forensic findings that have been misinterpreted. Marcus Webb is not the monster they're portraying. He's a husband, a son, a member of this community who's being railroaded because the police needed someone to blame. The mother watched it on television and felt her jaw clench. Husband. He'd terrorized his wife for years. Son. His own mother had released a statement saying she no longer recognized the man her son had become. Community member. He'd hunted women in that community like they were prey. The lies were so brazen, so audacious, that they would have been laughable if they weren't so dangerous. But the mother knew the truth had a weight that lies couldn't match. And in less than 2 weeks, a jury would see that truth for themselves. The night before the trial began, the mother drove to the preserve one last time. She parked in the same spot she'd parked 5.5 years ago, walked the same trail, stood at the same place where she'd last seen her daughter alive. The forest was quiet, peaceful, as if nothing had ever happened here. But the mother knew better. Evil had walked these paths, had waited in these shadows, had stolen a life in these woods. And now, finally, it would answer for what it had done. She laid a white flower at the base of the memorial oak tree and whispered, "Tomorrow, sweetheart. Tomorrow we begin." The wind moved through the leaves, carrying her words away. And somewhere in the darkness, the forest held its breath. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. Reporters lined the back wall. Sketch artists sat poised with their charcoal pencils. The mother recognized faces from over the years, families she'd helped through her foundation, volunteers who'd searched for Emily, people from Marion who'd followed the case since the beginning. And there, at the defense table, sat Marcus Webb. He wore a suit, navy blue, pressed crisp. His hair had been cut, his face clean-shaven. His attorney had clearly worked to make him look sympathetic, harmless. But the mother knew what he was. Judge Morrison entered, and everyone stood. "Please be seated. We're here for the matter of the people of Illinois versus Marcus Anthony Webb. Is the prosecution ready?" Rachel Chin rose. "Ready, Your Honor." Defense. Webb's attorney stood. "Ready, Your Honor." "Then let's begin with jury selection." The process took 3 days. Potential jurors were questioned extensively. Had they heard about the case? Could they be impartial? Did they have strong feelings about circumstantial evidence? About DNA testing? The defense tried to strike anyone who seemed sympathetic to victims' families. The prosecution tried to strike anyone who seemed skeptical of forensic science. In the end, they seated 12 jurors and 2 alternates. 7 women, 5 men. Ages ranging from 25 to 68. A teacher, a mechanic, a retired nurse, a small business owner, and others from various walks of life. These 12 people would decide Marcus Webb's fate. The mother studied each of them, trying to read their faces, trying to believe they'd see the truth. Opening statements began on a cold October morning. Rachel Chin approached the jury box, her voice clear and steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about a predator. A man who stalked young women, who fantasized about controlling them, hurting them, who, on June 16, 2018, acted on those fantasies and brutally murdered 19-year-old Emily Hartman. The evidence will show that Marcus Webb followed Emily to a nature preserve where she was hiking with her mother, that he watched her, waited for her to be alone, and then attacked her with such violence that she fought for her life, literally clawing at her attacker, leaving his DNA under her fingernails. You'll hear from forensic experts who will tell you that the DNA found on Emily's body matches Marcus Webb's. You'll see journal entries written by the defendant describing fantasies about young women who looked like Emily. You'll see photographs he took of Emily without her knowledge, months before her death. And you'll see security footage placing him at the scene on the morning she disappeared. The defense will try to create doubt. They'll suggest that maybe Emily knew the defendant, that maybe their encounter was somehow consensual. But the evidence, The physical evidence, the forensic evidence, the documented evidence of his obsession will prove otherwise. Emily Hartman was murdered, and Marcus Webb is the man who killed her. Chin returned to her seat. The defense attorney, a man named Gerald Hutchins, stood and buttoned his jacket. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution just told you a story. A compelling story. A tragic story. But it's just that, a story. Not facts. Not proof. Yes, Marcus Webb's DNA was found on Emily Hartman's body. But DNA doesn't tell you intent. It doesn't tell you what happened. It only tells you that there was contact between two people. The prosecution wants you to believe my client is a monster. But they can't prove how Emily died. They can't prove my client intended to harm her. They can't even prove he was the last person to see her alive. What they have is circumstantial evidence, speculation, and a rush to judgment because they needed to close a case that had gone cold. Marcus Webb is innocent, and by the end of this trial, I believe you'll see that the prosecution simply hasn't met their burden of proof. The prosecution called their first witness, the medical examiner. Dr. Robert Kessler took the stand and described Emily's injuries in clinical detail. Blunt force trauma to the head, multiple strikes, defensive wounds on her hands and forearms. In your professional opinion, Dr. Kessler, was this attack sustained or brief? Sustained. The number and location of injuries suggest the victim fought back for several minutes. And the defensive wounds, what do they tell you? That she was trying to protect herself, to fend off her attacker. The defense cross-examined, trying to suggest the injuries could have come from a fall, from hitting her head on rocks. But Dr. Kessler was unshakable. The pattern of injuries is inconsistent with a fall. This was an assault. The forensic technician came next, explaining how DNA evidence is collected and analyzed. She walked the jury through the process of extracting DNA from under Emily's fingernails, showed them how the profile was compared to the database, confirmed the match to Marcus Webb. Is there any chance this could be a mistake? Chin asked. No. The probability of this DNA belonging to someone other than Marcus Webb is approximately 1 in 47 billion. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The defense tried to attack the handling of the evidence, suggested contamination, procedural errors. But the technician had documented everything meticulously, every step, every transfer, every analysis. The DNA evidence stood. Detective Brennan testified for an entire day. She walked the jury through the investigation from the beginning, the search efforts, the discovery of Emily's body, the years of dead ends and false leads, and then the breakthrough. When the cold case unit retested the DNA using updated technology, we got a hit. Marcus Webb. His DNA matched the profile from Emily's fingernails. Chen displayed the journal entries on a screen for the jury. Page after page of Marcus Webb's handwriting. Descriptions of women. Fantasies of control. And then, 6 months before Emily's death. Saw her again today at the community center. She doesn't notice me. None of them do. But I see them. I see everything. The courtroom was silent. Chen showed the photographs next. The ones Webb had taken of Emily without her knowledge. Emily at the grocery store. Emily at the gas station. Emily at the community center, laughing with friends. Emily at the preserve, on a previous hike, months before her death. He'd been watching her, Brennan said quietly. For months, he'd been following her, learning her patterns, waiting. The mother sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. She'd known this, had seen the evidence. But hearing it presented this way, seeing her daughter's face on that screen, knowing Webb had been watching her, hunting her, it was almost unbearable. She felt a hand on her shoulder. Another victim's mother, sitting beside her. A silent gesture of solidarity. The mother took a breath and kept listening. The gas station security footage was played for the jury. Grainy, black and white, but clear enough. A blue pickup truck. The timestamp, 9:52 a.m., June 16, 2018. The driver's face, captured for just a few seconds as he looked toward the camera. Marcus Webb. This places the defendant at the preserve within minutes of when Emily disappeared, Chin said. The defense objected. Argued the image quality wasn't clear enough for positive identification. But the prosecution had brought in facial recognition experts who'd analyzed the footage. The measurements matched Webb's face. The probability of error was less than 1%. On the fifth day of trial, the prosecution called their final witness. The people call Mrs. Elizabeth Hartman. The mother stood, her legs shaking. She'd prepared for this, rehearsed it. But now, walking to the witness stand with Marcus Webb's eyes on her, she felt the weight of every moment since that June morning. She was sworn in and sat down. Rachel Chin approached gently. Mrs. Hartman, can you tell the jury about your daughter Emily? The mother looked at the jury. 12 faces watching her. She was kind, the mother said, her voice steady despite the tears. She was smart and funny and full of life. She wanted to be a teacher. She loved hiking, reading, spending time with her friends. She was my whole world. Tell us about June 16, 2018. The mother walked them through that morning. The drive to the preserve. The hike. The moment she realized Emily was gone. Did you see anyone else on the trail that day? Just a glimpse. When we first arrived, I saw someone in the parking lot, getting out of a truck. But I didn't pay attention. I didn't think. Her voice broke. Chen waited, letting her gather herself. Did you recognize that person? No. Not then. And now? The mother looked directly at Marcus Webb. Now I know it was him. Webb stared back, his expression blank. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Hartman, isn't it true that you weren't actually with your daughter when she disappeared? I was on the same trail. But not with her. She was ahead of you. Out of sight. For a few minutes, yes. So you don't actually know what happened to her. The mother's jaw tightened. I know someone killed her. But you didn't see who. The evidence. I'm asking what you saw, Mrs. Hartman. Not what you believe. Not what the prosecution has told you. What did you actually witness? The mother forced herself to stay calm. I saw my daughter walk ahead on the trail. And I never saw her alive again. Thank you. No further questions. The prosecution rested. The defense called their own experts. A DNA analyst who suggested contamination was possible, a psychologist who testified that journal entries were fantasy, not intent. But none of it was enough to counter the mountain of evidence. The defense didn't call Marcus Webb to testify. Too risky. He'd be torn apart on cross-examination. Instead, they rested their case after just 2 days. Closing arguments began on a Friday afternoon. Rachel Chin stood before the jury one final time. Marcus Webb hunted Emily Hartman. He stalked her. He followed her. And on June 16, 2018, he killed her. The evidence is overwhelming. The journal, the photographs, the security footage. All of it points to one inescapable conclusion. Marcus Webb is guilty. Emily fought for her life. She left us a clue, his DNA under her fingernails. She gave us the truth. Now it's up to you to honor that truth, to give her justice, to make sure Marcus Webb never hurts another person again. Gerald Hutchins gave his closing next, but his words rang hollow. Reasonable doubt. Circumstantial evidence. Rush to judgment. The jury wasn't buying it. The mother could see it in their faces. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. The mother waited in a private room with Rachel Chen and Detective Brennan. She couldn't eat, couldn't sit still. She paced, checked her phone, prayed to a God she wasn't sure she still believed in. At 6:43 p.m., the call came. The jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom filled quickly. The mother took her seat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Detective Brennan sat beside her, silent and steady. The jury filed in, their faces unreadable. Judge Morrison addressed them. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreperson stood. "We have, Your Honor." "What say you?" "On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Emily Grace Hartman, we find the defendant, Marcus Anthony Webb, guilty." The courtroom erupted. The mother closed her eyes and felt something inside her finally break open, not with pain, but with release. "Guilty." The judge banged his gavel, calling for order. "On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Jessica Crawford?" "Guilty." "On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Stephanie Mills?" "Guilty." The mother opened her eyes and looked at Marcus Webb. He sat motionless, staring straight ahead. No emotion, no reaction, just emptiness. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks later. The media surrounded the mother as she left the courthouse. Microphones thrust toward her. Questions shouted from every direction. She stopped on the steps and faced them. "Today, justice was served. Not just for my daughter Emily, but for Jessica Crawford, Stephanie Mills, and every other woman Marcus Webb terrorized. This verdict doesn't bring them back. It doesn't heal the wounds, but it ensures that he can never hurt anyone again. I want to thank Detective Brennan, Prosecutor Chen, and everyone who never gave up on this case. And I want to say to other families still waiting for answers, don't stop fighting. Don't stop demanding justice. Your loved ones deserve to be remembered, and their voices deserve to be heard." She walked away, Detective Brennan at her side, and didn't look back. 6 weeks later, Marcus Webb was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 3 consecutive life sentences, to be exact. The mother attended the sentencing. She'd prepared a victim impact statement, and the judge allowed her to read it. She stood at the podium and looked at Marcus Webb one final time. "You took my daughter from me. You stole her future. You tried to bury her, to erase her, to make her disappear. But you failed. Emily is remembered. She is loved. She is honored. And because of her, because of what you did to her, other families have gotten answers. Other killers have been caught. Other women have been protected. You wanted to make her nothing. But instead, you made her legacy eternal. I forgive you, Marcus Webb. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let you have any more of my life than you've already taken. You are nothing to me now. Just a sad, broken man who will die alone in a cell. Emily lives on. In her foundation. In the work we do. In every life we save. And you? You'll be forgotten." She folded her statement and walked back to her seat. Marcus Webb said nothing. Showed nothing. He was led away in chains, and the mother never saw him again. The years passed slowly at first. The mother continued her advocacy work, expanding the foundation to provide resources for families of missing persons across Illinois and beyond. She testified before state legislatures, pushing for better funding for cold case investigations. She trained law enforcement on recognizing patterns of stalking behavior. She became a voice that couldn't be silenced. On the 7th anniversary of Emily's death, the Illinois legislature passed Emily's Law, requiring law enforcement agencies to re-examine cold case evidence using updated DNA technology every 5 years. The mother attended the signing ceremony at the state capitol in Springfield. Governor stood beside her as he signed the bill into law. "This will save lives," he said. The mother nodded. That's all Emily ever wanted, to help people. By the 10th anniversary, the preserve had been officially renamed the Emily Grace Hartman Nature Preserve. A new sign stood at the entrance. A larger memorial had been built near the main trail, not just a bench, but a small pavilion with plaques telling Emily's story and honoring the other victims. The mother visited every year on Emily's birthday. She'd hike the trail, slower now, her body older, but her spirit unbroken. She'd sit at the memorial and talk to her daughter, tell her about the foundation, about the families they'd helped, about the 14 cold cases that had been solved because of Emily's Law. "You made a difference, sweetheart," she'd say. "You changed the world." On what would have been Emily's 30th birthday, the mother made the hike one more time. It was a warm June morning, the kind of day that reminded her of that last hike they'd taken together. The forest was alive with birdsong. The creek rushed somewhere in the distance. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden beams. The mother reached the memorial and sat on the bench. She placed a single white flower at the base of the plaque, her ritual, her promise kept. She looked up at the sky, watching the clouds drift lazily overhead. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I never stopped fighting. I made sure they remembered you. Made sure your voice was heard." The wind moved through the trees, rustling the leaves in a sound that was almost like a whisper. Almost like a voice saying, "I know, Mom. I know." The mother smiled through her tears. She stayed there for a long time, just sitting, just remembering, just being present with the memory of her daughter. Finally, she stood. Her joints ached. Her legs were tired. But her heart, somehow, impossibly, felt lighter than it had in years. She walked back down the trail, taking her time. There was no rush anymore. No desperate urgency. Just the steady, patient knowledge that she'd done everything she could. When she reached the parking lot, she paused and looked back. The forest stood quiet and peaceful. A sacred place now. A place of memory and healing. She climbed into her car and pulled out her phone. There was a voicemail saved in her files, one she'd kept all these years. One she listened to sometimes when the grief became too heavy. She pressed play. Emily's voice filled the car, bright and young and full of life. "Hey Mom, it's me. I'm just calling to say I love you. Don't wait up. I'm staying at Rachel's tonight. I'll see you tomorrow. Love you so much." The message ended. The mother sat there, tears streaming down her face, and whispered back, "Love you too, sweetheart. Forever." She started the car and drove away. Behind her, the sun continued its arc across the sky, casting long shadows through the trees. The Emily Grace Hartman Nature Preserve stood silent and still, a testament to a life stolen, a mother's love, and a promise kept. And somewhere in those woods, where the light touched the leaves just right, it almost looked like a girl was standing on the trail. Smiling. Free. At peace. The end. In loving memory of all those lost to violence. May their voices never be silenced. May their stories never be forgotten. May justice always find its way home.
Thanks for tuning in to The Witness Wall. If you're new to this channel, kindly like and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.